I want to welcome everyone to a new thing we're trying here at Hickman Transport. Uh, I got two guests with me, Matt Gore of Strategic Comp and Chris Charboneau of Strategic Comp, and we're going to try to have a little bit of a conversation about safe driving practices, some of the dangers that are out there on the road for us, and we hope you guys find this a little useful. Anyways, we're going to go straight to it. Our topics are going to be distracted driving, some of the causes of it, some of the ways we can prevent and improve distracted driving. We're also going to then talk about defensive driving practices. We'll also mention a few things about the cameras, the Samsara cameras, and GPS units that are in everyone's trucks, and we'll touch on that. But first, let's introduce. This is Matt Gore of Strategic Comp. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about your position with Strategic Comp and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Matt. I've been with Strategic Comp a little over 5 years now, but I've been in the insurance industry about 18 years. Most of that time has been in loss prevention. I've worked in auto coverage and all the other lines of coverage pretty much ever since day one, getting into loss prevention. And then I moved into management here at Strategic Comp, and I'm currently regional vice president over our Florida and South Georgia clients.
Awesome.
And it's been a pleasure to work with Chris.
Hey, I'm Chris Charboneau. I've been with Strategic Comp about 13 years and been doing employee safety since, I guess, 1999. So my role is to act as a resource and help you guys look at your claims and trending and ways we can help you guys improve and prevent accidents.
So we have been with Strategic Comp, and it's a division of Great American, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Of Great American Insurance. We've been with Strategic Comp 2 years now on auto side, for auto insurance. These guys have been great to work with. They have a lot of information to share regarding safety. They know the trends in the industry. But let's dive right into this and kind of talk a little bit about distracted driving. And I guess one of the big things right now with distracted driving tends to be cell phone use. Cell phone use is, everyone has a computer in their pocket now. It does everything. Social media apps, video streaming, everything else. It's designed to capture our eyeballs. And I guess the big problem is when you're in CDL trucking, your eyeballs don't need to be on the screen. I just want to throw out a couple of things that I just looking into some studies that have been done on cell phones use while driving. Some studies have shown that you're 23 times more likely to be in an accident if you're on a cell phone, handling a cell phone, texting on a cell phone while driving. Some other studies have said basically if you're handling your cell phone, hands-on, messing with it, whatever, scrolling through Instagram, it's the equivalent of having a blood alcohol level of 0.19, which I wasn't familiar with what blood alcohol level is really bad, but it turns out, at least in one of our states that we operate in, primarily Florida, that's about 2.5 times the legal limit.
So I'll add on this. So there's a study done. You can look it up on, I want to say it was Car and Driver magazine, where they took a group of drivers and they put them through a road test, and they would have different things happen during the road test, and they would they put them in different categories. One group was not distracted at all; they don't have anything, they're just driving normally. And then the second group was using a cell phone. Third group was reading a book, like a magazine, and the third group was actually a little bit intoxicated. Now this was a closed course; they weren't unleashing drunk drivers onto the road. And they would test the reaction time. They'd say, okay, this would happen. They have to see how quickly they would stop. Or then they would get all the data together, and they kind of compared which one was worse. And as you can imagine, reading's pretty bad. But of those things, cell phone, because they're on the phone having conversation, tended to be far worse than any of the other stimuli or other things that happened. Way worse than drunk driving. And I'm not advocating drinking and driving, but if those who were intoxicated had thrown a few back, they weren't blacked out drunk, but they had thrown back. At least they were trying. You know, the reaction were definitely slowed, but the cell phone use when they were just that distracted, it was generally far worse than most people who were actually drunk. So I imagine that. Imagine you're out there and looking around when 2 out of every 3 people are on their phone. While if you just look around, you don't think much of it. You see it; it's what you're used to. You know it's wrong, but you don't really react much to it. But what if 2 or 3 people you saw driving around you were drinking, had a beer in their hand, and just kicking one back? So it gives you a different perspective.
It does.
On that.
Yeah, if you combine the fact that you're on your cell phone and you are not as in control of your own behaviors because you're distracted, but combine that with so many other cars that are near you doing the same exact thing, it's a double whammy. It's a double recipe for danger.
It is. And we oftentimes we think when something like that's going on, we're just multitasking.
Yeah.
We can multitask, but in reality, people aren't really good at multitasking. You may be switching between things, but your focus is on one thing.
Yeah.
When your eyes on the road, your focus is on the road, not your cell phone.
Yeah.
When your eyes are on your cell phone, your focus is on the phone, not the road. That's good stuff. One other thing with the cell phones, of course, it is in a commercial motor vehicle. It's illegal to be handling a cell phone. It is a fine, a substantial fine.
Yeah.
So
it also would increase the cost of a serious claim, and from a negligence standpoint. So if you are, if you're shown to have been on the phone while there's an accident, the damages that could be awarded, or the punitive damages that could hit Hickman Transport or anyone else, would be far greater.
Yeah, and think about it from a personal standpoint, how that could affect you personally, not just Hickman. It can affect you if there's a civil suit or something else. So there's consequences not just for the company, but personally, it could be very damaging, not only to your own health, but financially and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and emotionally too.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Our guys and our drivers, and any commercial driver needs to know that they're out on the road with a large piece of equipment that can do a lot of damage if something bad happens. And when those things do happen, just getting that emotional baggage over being the cause of that event can be quite difficult. I want to touch a little bit on everyone knows we're not supposed to be messing with our cell phones while driving. A lot of our drivers, most all of them, have Bluetooth operated headsets, and that's that's allowed under DOT regulations, under law, to have. I think it's called one touch, where you touch once on the cell phone to answer. There's also, you can do voice command things on your cell phone to answer. But even then, when you have, and this is something, Matt, you've relayed to me a couple of times about the headsets, even then, even though it's legal, there are certain things you may want to avoid, like longer, more intense.
Exactly. And I'm actually guilty of this myself. I mean, I'm on the road all over Florida, South Georgia. Chris is too. And I hope some of those distractions might be you and me talking sometimes. But example, last week I was driving from, or I had to go from where I live in St. Augustine down to Plant City, just south of Orlando. And I was on a long conversation. I can't remember who it was with. It must not have been that important. I don't know who it was, but it was a long conversation. And I literally drove straight past I-4 completely. And this is a route I do every single, every week. I know where I'm going. I don't need GPS to tell me to make the turn, but I just kept on going. Didn't realize it until it was too late that I completely missed I-4 by several miles.
Yeah.
I was late for my appointment. So it was because I was distracted. And I think, I like to think during that time that I was paying attention, but I couldn't even pay attention to what road I had to be on. Was I really paying attention? If a car pulled in front of me and slammed on the brakes, would I have seen them? Yeah. I like to think I would have, but likely I would have not. Think about how many times you drive someplace and not even on the phone, just mentally distracted, just lost in thought. And if being lost in thought can cause you that much distracted where you can't remember what you've been doing the past 5 minutes on a drive, imagine what being in an active conversation with somebody who isn't there would cause you. So
yeah, I've actually done the same thing, going down 75, wanting to turn off on 10 to go towards Jacksonville, completely missed it. Next thing I know, I'm Gainesville, Ocala.
Ocala.
Yeah, because I had the phone on speaker talking through the car, but just so involved with the conversation.
Exactly.
So yeah, it took my mind off the road. Beyond cell phones, which is kind of the more obvious thing, there are also other causes of distracted driving. A big one that I saw statistically and is as far as causing accidents is reaching for stuff in the cab.
Yeah.
Now, I can again personally attest to this. I've had something that has fallen into the floorboard or is on the other seat, reaching over. It's almost inevitable that that's a bad move.
Yeah.
And I realize it instantly because next thing I'm on the rumble strip or something.
Yeah. You tend to inadvertently drive the car in the direction in which you reach.
Which
you could end up
which is 9 times out of 10 this direction.
And which, if you're in the left lane, that could be someone else's car.
Exactly. Some other things that can be touched on is eating and drinking in the vehicles. Now, it involves reaching to pick up a cup or pick up a sandwich or whatever, or going through the bag of food or whatnot. But it's taking your attention off of the road, off of your surroundings. There is that reaching that we were talking about and possible moving of the wheel. It's probably not a good idea to I guess have your meal time in the truck. I know sometimes we spend a lot of times in the truck, and a lot of our employees do, but it's probably not a good idea to be doing that while driving, right?
So I'll give an extreme example of that. By the way, we have an oil company we insure. It's out of South Florida. I won't name their names, but this made the news several years back. So we wrote we wrote their work comp, not their auto. On the very first day we insured them, they were one of their transport trucks of fuel was rear-ended by another fuel transport truck. And what had happened was the driver. Now, our client was not at fault in this accident. It was something being very expensive. The driver of the other truck who rear ended them was actually heating up food on a hot plate while driving his transport truck full of fuel. Wow. Day one of us insuring it ended up being a $400,000 or $500,000. We're lucky our driver wasn't killed. I mean, he was seriously injured. The driver of that truck, I actually think he survived, but it was life-altering injuries. I mean, very sad and completely. I'm talking about preventable, completely avoidable. So. Yeah, that's an extreme eating example. Yeah. Hopefully, your drivers aren't making food while they're driving.
I would hope so. Nobody has a hot plate in their car. But even beyond that, I just think it's important for our drivers and for all commercial drivers to be conscious that even something as simple as that, it's really, and I'll kind of break this down. Distracted driving falls into 3 categories. There's the visual, which is basically anything that diverts your eyes from the road. And it's not just the road. It's as we'll talk about a little later, it's about keeping a visual on your mirrors, who's behind you, what's coming up behind you. There's cognitive distractions. Cognitive distractions are things maybe like the Bluetooth conversation and your mind is thinking about something else.
Yeah.
You miss the exit. Or perhaps some emotional stuff is going on in your life and your mind is just, you're not focused on the road. And there's manual distractions. Manual distractions are primarily what we were talking about with the reaching. It's taking one or both, hopefully nobody's taking both hands off the wheel as they're operating their vehicle. So visual, cognitive, and manual distractions. Now, cell phone use really falls into all 3 of those. You got the cognitive, as we were talking about, you're focused on that. You got the visual, you're looking at your phone. manual, you're reaching to pick it up and you're flipping through it. There's probably a hand off the wheel. You're not doing it like that. One thing with the cognitive, because that's kind of, it's a little, having your mind distracted. A lot of things are getting our attention. A lot of the highway is made to get our attention with the billboards and whatnot, and to bring our focus away from the road to off of that. And so we got to be conscious of that. I know a safety manager for another trucking company who told me a story not long ago about this guy. He's been a CDL trucker for 20 years, perfect record. I think he even had those 2 million safe mile award. He was got a certificate for it. Well, all of a sudden, he is backing up in a loading dock area. But anyway, he hit a bollard. Those are those
concrete posts or metal.
Exactly, that you see. Hit a bollard. Another week later, he does a little damage to his trailer in another loading area. Then he gets into a minor, but a rear-end collision with another passenger vehicle. So anyways, the safety director, he's calling him. He's like, I can't really remember the name of the driver, but he's saying, what's going on? You've had all this time that things have been, you've been a safe driver for 20 plus years. Now we have an accident every 3 weeks for the past 3 weeks here. And he's, he kind of, this guy told me he paused for a second. He just kind of broke down to him. He said, well, I'm going through a nasty divorce right now with my wife. And it became obvious that just all of that emotion and thinking about that was affecting his driving. A guy who's gone 2 decades safe, and all of a sudden he's getting into this stuff. So that kind of tells you how just anything that takes your mind off the road, even for a guy who has 2 decades of a safe driving record, it can become unsafe. And so we got to do everything we can. If there isn't the nasty divorce, we can't be distracted by other things, to pay attention to the road, pay attention to our surroundings. We're at work. Everyone else is just traveling down the road. But we're at work when we're on the road.
That's probably a nice opportunity to talk about the value of keeping in touch with our employees, knowing what's going on with them, and being able to maybe know some of that stuff ahead of time, because the closer relationship we have with our employees, the more likely we are to know if there's something going on that could be a distraction, so we can be there for them and just at least have a heads up about it. So maybe we can try to somehow divert that situation in a way, or control it in a way to where it could help prevent an injury or an accident.
There you go.
For the managers watching, that's an excellent point. Keep tabs.
Keep tabs.
If something's up, say something. Just like when we say to, if you see something or if you see behavior that's bad, speak up about it. But if you see someone that seems off, not doing anything wrong per se, ask them.
And that is good for our managers, because they know these guys personally. They see them every day, and they can probably get a sense of if something's off, or maybe even know what's going on, and just be able to touch with them, make sure everything's good for them to be out operating their equipment.
For sure.
I'd like to go into a couple of things. We've discussed a little bit some of the causes of distracted driving. Number one, cell phone, reaching for stuff in the cab. But I just want to go over maybe some tips and just get you guys' reaction, or maybe you guys have some additional stuff of how to avoid distracted driving. One of them is, as we're talking about with the cell phones, most of our cell phones, I know the iPhones, I think the Samsara phones, have a do not disturb function on them that you can turn on. Basically, this ensures that, if we're ever driving and we have a cell phone, say it's sitting in a cell phone holder or in a drink hole or something, and somebody's texting us, we're wanting to see what that is right then. With the do not disturb, that doesn't come through while you're going. That could be a good thing, to just ensure that you're not, going to that cell phone every time.
Yes. I think that's an excellent function. I think maybe go even before that. I mean, that's if you need to regulate yourself by using that function, by all means. But I would just say plan your day. Just being, I can attest for myself when I am most distracted on the road is probably when I have woken up late, or if I'm running behind, something's caused me to leave. My job, both Chris and our roles, we're in the road a lot. Maybe not as much as your drivers, but definitely more. I mean, Chris and I are almost professional drivers. It's about 40,000 plus miles we put in our car every year. But the days where I am late getting out of the house to my appointment or whatever it is, chances are I'm trying to catch up while driving. I'm trying to, okay, well, I got to call this person. I'll call when I get on the road. These things happen. If I'm better prepared, I am far less distracted by all those things. So I would say the same thing for your drivers. If you prepare your day before you head out, all right, if I'm going to listen to music, is it already ready? Or if I'm going to listen to something on the radio, is that already set up? Am I hungry? Okay, did I eat something before I left? I think I don't want to quote this wrong, but the best is it the best defense is good offense, or is that the way around? But something like that. that quote, kind of goes well with distracted driving and just being safe on the road.
Good. And so the do not disturb function is an option. I know, Matt, you've talked to me a little bit about there are some driver apps out there that can be useful. Basically,
there's one. I believe it's called Lifesaver.
Okay,
I'm not misquoting that. We're not sponsored, so. It's okay.
I'm sure there are many of them.
We should have had them sponsored. That would be fun. But Lifesaver is one of them. That is basically when you're driving, it keeps your. I want to say it keeps your phone from people being able to call your phone. I believe that's my understanding of that. So
app. When it senses it moving in the car,
it'll send an automatic response or something like that. So there are apps that actually, and I'm not sure if there's a cost to them, but. Yes, that's the one off the top of my head.
A great option for ensuring that you're kind of protecting yourself against yourself.
Exactly.
In a lot of ways. Now, if you are, if you are using a phone while you're driving, of course, only do this through your headset.
Yes.
It's like we mentioned before, it is against the law for commercial drivers. It's against the law in Georgia, Marshall, isn't it? Marshall's behind the camera
here. Too, actually, I believe to some extent there's
for even passenger cars to be picking up and going through.
Yeah.
But we do recommend headsets. Many of our drivers do have headsets. Yeah. But as we talked about before, try to limit the conversations on the headsets. Just make it short. You don't want to get into long conversations. You don't want to be on the headset the whole time. As we talked about with the cognitive distractions, that can come into play. But headsets are allowed, but use them reasonably for important information that you need to get. If you do need to text or dial somebody, I guess, would y'all say it's probably the best option to wait till you get to a fueling stop, wait till you get to maybe one of your delivery stops to do that? Of course not while on the road.
Of course, yeah. Absolutely. Meal time.
Yeah. Another good option would probably be to, instead of having your phone just laying in the other seat or something,
put it in your bag. Yeah.
Put it in your bag, get it away from you. The do not disturb, and I guess, but if you're using a headset and you have the one touch, I guess, is it touch on the headset?
I'm pretty sure most of those headsets are just a tap on the side.
A tap on the headset. Okay. Also, we talked a little bit about eating. In the truck. I guess we talked about how that can be a distraction. Maybe it's best to plan your meals when you're not in the truck.
Yes, I would say so. If you have a lunch break, use that time. Or if you eat breakfast before you get in your truck.
There you go.
I know some people like to fidget. They just get antsy. I'm one of those people. And so instead of having a giant sandwich, maybe have a couple breath mints.
Gotcha.
There's half a medium if you really need that, just to keep yourself from falling asleep or whatever. Keep yourself active. I find breath mints to be great. Something small like that. That's you're not having to really deal with both hands.
Tide you over until you get to your next stop. Then you can break out the sandwich, go through it, and then head out on the road again. Something that I was kind of thinking of, and I just see what you guys think of this, is sometimes a distraction in the vehicle could be because your vehicle's just cluttered up. Mm-hmm. You have stuff everywhere. Things are all over the place. Maybe if you kept your vehicles clean, kept them organized for driving. Mm-hmm. If you did have to have stuff nearby, make sure you're not having to reach over here. It's near you at all times, and you know where it is.
Yeah,
that's a good way to It's just kind of setting up setting up your workspace for when you're hitting the road.
Oh, for sure. I'm actually, I know with my car that when it's more organized, it's relaxing. I'm not as stressed out when I don't have clutter all around me.
Could go back to the cognitive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or people, you see these trucks, a lot of times it's service contractors with paper all over their dashboard. That's a glare issue, actually a glare on the window. Visibility. Yeah. So, keep your truck in good order.
There you go. All those items that are loose, if you're going to have an accident or a rollover, that's more projectiles and everything else that's going to be coming at you.
Yeah, that's very true. Mm-hmm. Very true.
I remember a long time when I was in the military, we had to go through a defensive driving class, and this retired police officer was talking about how people had the stuff on the back part of the back seat, and he said one of the people they found had a pencil through their head because if you stop, that pencil's going 70 or 80 miles an hour. Everything behind you is coming up at you. So all that stuff is just more stuff that can be damaging to you if you have an accident or roll over or tip over or something. So
that's great stuff. Guys, we're going to take a short break here before we go to our next segment on defensive driving practices. But I think I want to sum up a little bit about the distracted driving. I guess a lot of it is just basically keep your hands on the wheel, your eyes on the road, your mind on your driving. And if you do all that, you're going to arrive home safe.
Yes.
Right?
That's most
of it. We'll see you after this short break. I want to welcome everybody back. We're, of course, here still with Matt Gore and Chris, and we're going to talk a little bit about defensive driving, just some strategies that maybe you can employ to help keep you safe, anticipate, see things happening on the road. A statistic that a University of Michigan study found was that for commercial driving accidents, 85 to 90% of them are actually caused by other passenger cars. Mm-hmm. Our guys, commercial drivers, they're the professionals on the road. Everyone else is just out doing whatever, having a good time. Unfortunately, we use the same roads.
Yes.
So we got to keep, we got to keep ourselves safe out there. One of the things is basically spacing for a commercial truck, and how much space does he give himself with the traffic in front of him, primarily for stopping distance if something happens up front. Now, I know, Matt, you got some stuff you'd like to share on this.
Well, and if you think about how far you're actually traveling and when you're going whatever speed. So if you're going 30 miles an hour, you're going to go 88 feet every 2 seconds. If you're going 60 miles an hour, it's 350 feet in 4 seconds. So add that with your reaction time, then consider the stopping distance of a large vehicle. You really need to give yourself a significant amount of time to really adequately stop. And one of the issues too, and Chris can talk a little bit about car lengths. And as I'm 40 years old, and when I was learning how to drive at 16, I was given for every however far you are away from a car, give yourself 2 seconds, or these different measurements of time But people measure time and distance very differently from each other. So it's you got to figure out what works best for you, because there's a study done when people would look at distances, and the question was, okay, how? I'll ask this. I'll even include Marshall behind the camera in this question.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone in the room here, how long? If you look at the white strips on the white dividing strips on a lane, how long are they? How big are they actually?
I'd say 5 feet.
Okay, 5 feet. Chris, what do you think?
12 feet.
12 feet. 3 feet. Chris is closer. They're usually between 9 and 12 feet long.
Okay.
They're far longer than you'd actually think they are, but you're driving past them so fast. Like, it's like 2-3 feet. The average person says 4 feet. That's what most people say when they see them, and they're twice as long as that at least.
Yeah.
What that shows us is that people view distance very differently. So, and they also count differently too. If I were to count to 2, I might say 1, 2, or Chris might say 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000. So it's tough to figure out really what metric you should use. But that's why it's always best to go more than you think. So, Chris, what was that? You were reading a stat in the break that we talked about.
The rule, I guess, that it's been around for a while is for every 10 miles an hour you go, you should have at least 1 car length between you. So that's just another way to sort of think about it. If you're doing 60, you want to have at least 6 car lengths behind you to have that proper safe distance in case you have to stop or something like that. And obviously, if you're the more distracted you are, then it's going to cut into that space. So having a little bit more space would actually be better, because who knows what can happen.
Who knows what can happen and how fast it can
That's just
happen.
the
And
minimum, I guess.
we've all come up on traffic
Yeah.
before when maybe it's slowed because there's a traffic stop or something, and especially on the interstates when it slows, it can slow dramatically.
Very quick.
And
Very
if
quick.
you're not paying attention and have enough buffer there, especially for a big piece of equipment like a tractor trailer or even a box truck, and under load, you need all that time as possible to come to a stop. A Honda Accord, of course, will come to a stop a lot quicker than one of our...
Than a box truck.
Yeah.
Plus, if the roads are wet or icy
roads
conditions,
are
obviously,
wet,
you
that's
wanna have
another... You probably expand that distance that you were talking about to give yourself even more time. A lot of the defensive driving, I guess, is just using it. In my mind, at least, it's a good thing that helps me is to think that everyone else out there is a complete idiot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you have that in mind, then you're going to be...
Well, I would say in some ways, I don't mean something like they kind of are.
Yeah.
And here's why I say that. And we were talking about this in the break as well. And you started with talking about how professional drivers are sharing the road with unprofessional drivers. And that's not an insult to their drivers, but if you think about this, Chris and I, we average about 40 to 50,000 miles a year in our car. We cover large territories. We drive every single day, a lot. Your drivers probably got the same, about 40 to 50,000 miles. I think we did the math. That's about what they drive on an annual basis. That's a tremendous amount of experience. If you think about that distance, and go car shopping, go look online at what's your average 4 to 5 year old Honda Accord. 40 to 60,000 miles in the entire life of that car. So you can say, okay, well, that person drive that car, in 5 years they did the driving that I do in 1 year. That's experience, and that might just be to and from work, to and from school.
Yeah.
These your professional drivers that you have, they're driving on the highways, on the side roads, and it might be dedicated routes. There's some conversation there to have, but experience matters. And if you're driving around people who don't have a lot of experience, they're not going to have the same they're not having these conversations we're having. So you really have to build an extra buffer to account for them, to account for the inexperience of those other drivers.
The inexperience, that's correct. I think you touched on the amount that our drivers drive in a year. 40,000 or so miles is about the average for Hickman transport drivers. Another thing with that, though, is sometimes all of our routes, as you guys are familiar with, are dedicated routes. And so sometimes drivers can come kind of, their same lanes all the time, a little bit complacent about things, and they've seen this stretch of road every day for the past year. But things change.
Yeah.
There's always that farm tractor coming out on the road or something that goes on. So, even though you've done it 100 times, you still got to kind of be aware and not
Yes, the
just
people that are
going down
driving
the pipe.
alongside absolutely change. The
Yeah.
road might stay the same for the most part, but
The people, the other elements
Yeah.
out there, or even the deer.
Absolutely. Oh
you
gosh,
know?
yes.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that I think I wanted to touch on with defensive driving is we talked about spacing and giving yourself time to brake in case there's an incident in front of you, but keep your eyes moving. And this is not just looking forward. You want to look forward and keep your eyes on the road, but you also want to be aware of what's behind you. All of our trucks have blind spots. Some of them, so I try to encourage all of our drivers, and I want to encourage them all to know your blind spots in the piece of equipment that you're in. Know where the hidden cars may be beside you. Also, use your mirrors.
Yeah.
Keep an idea of what's coming behind you, who's entering, who's exiting your blind spots, and definitely before you make a maneuver, be certain that blind spot. Now, I know that some of our trucks have the little blind spot mirrors that can help with that, and I want to encourage any of our drivers that would like one of those installed on their trucks. We can help with that. So just get in touch with us, and we'll identify that truck that doesn't have one, and if that may be an assistance in that.
I'm thinking about that, and mirrors is especially important, and this is kind of going back into our conversation about inexperienced drivers, but when you are checking your mirrors, making lane changes, don't assume that just because their driver should see you in their mirrors that they can actually see you in their mirrors. A lot of people, your average ordinary driver, does not know how to use their side view mirrors like they should. They have them set up where if they look to the right side mirror, they see half of their own car and nothing of the traffic coming on. Mirrors should be set so now large trucks a little different. You're dealing with different things, but the average car should have the mirror set up where they should see the people coming up to the side of them until they're next to them in the car, then they should see them out their window. But most people do not have their mirror set up that way. So if you ever, I'm thinking in a truck, if you're ever driving down, even going just straight, and someone just kind of comes into your lane, and you're thinking, what the hell? Why don't they see me? They might not. They might have their mirror set up completely wrong, and they're driving blind.
Yeah. So finding those blind spots, adjusting the mirrors, and sometimes it could be even driver specific. If you get into a vehicle that maybe somebody else was last into,
lower,
you may have to check those mirrors and make some adjustments. I think it comes down to in that topic kind of I know some of our drivers probably played football back in high school. They probably heard their coach say, keep your head on a swivel. Be aware of what's around you, not just in front of you, behind you, all 360 view around you, so you know how to react. Another thing I wanted to touch on with defensive driving is all of us have seen these situations on interstate roads where a lot of times they're the little juiced up cars. Sometimes they may just be the minivan that a mom is having a bad day and she's being a little extra heavy on the pedal. But the aggressive drivers, and you recognize them when you see them. They're weaving in and out of traffic. They're not matching the speed of the rest of the traffic flow. And they stand out like a sore thumb. And I am surprised that, as they go down the road sometimes, how hopefully that's just the little length that they're driving that way, because I don't know if they could drive that way full time without being in an accident.
You'd be surprised how far people get. So the best analogy I ever heard on discussing on how people act when they're behind the wheel, a couple things really. One, it's those people that you see driving aggressively. If you took them out of their car and just had them walk on the sidewalk, they wouldn't act that way. People, there is a psychological impact on putting yourself inside a car, around with a steel cage around you. No, people can sort of see in, but you're sort of in your own little world, and you react differently. If someone cuts you off, I'm I try not to be guilty of this. I'm sure there's times where I am, where you're like, you'll cuss at them. You're like, what the heck are you doing in front of me? Maybe use some different words. If someone walks in front of you, like, well, I was in the airport yesterday, someone cuts in front of me, I don't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, they're just walking. But if that happens on a roadway, you act completely differently. A lot of times, there's a disorder, and it sounds like a bodily function, but it's an intermittent explosive disorder, and it's essentially road rage. It's when you black out and you do crazy things behind the wheel because you're so angry. It's almost like a flip gets switched, or a switch gets flipped. Sorry, that way around. And that's when you have people who run people over, they smash their cars, drive through businesses. And after that's done, after this event has happened, usually the driver is like, very remorseful. And I can't believe I did that. But it's a reaction that you get from being behind the wheel and the stress of it. So I would say, obviously, watch out for those people, but also check yourself. If you are a more aggressive driver, we all have different degrees of how we drive and how we react to things. If you're the type of person who might react like that, find something that chills you out. Yeah. For me, I'm not a very aggressive driver, but I'm a lead foot naturally. That's just for whatever reason I have a lead foot. I've learned ways to kind of combat that. But my thing is the music I'm listening to behind the wheel. I'm also play guitar. I like hard rock, but I tend to put on more relaxing music behind the wheel because I'm less likely to get aggressive.
Press on that pedal.
I'll say one more thing on this. I know this is you might have been touching on one other major distraction is being fatigued while behind the wheel. For those drivers who like to listen to louder music, even if it doesn't make you more aggressive, that will wear you out. Loud music actually fatigues your body. So
that's interesting.
It's something to be careful of if you're wondering. And I'm all about listening. As long as you're not changing the station while you're driving, being distracted by it. If you got something that you like listening to, by all means do it. But be aware that just because you like hard rock, if you find yourself getting more fatigued while listening to it, that's actually, that sound is wearing on your body and will wear you out. So just a little fun fact about loud music while driving.
I guess to sum up with the aggressive drivers is they're going to be out there. There's nothing we can do about it. Most of the time, they're moving pretty fast. Let them move past you.
Let them go.
Let them go. Clear them out of your range, your 360 view of your truck. Especially, do not or avoid the best you can performing any kind of maneuver when they're in your vicinity, like lane changes or anything like that. That may not be always possible, but if you can, let them go. Because they're bad news, and they, as Matt was saying, sometimes they don't even know what they're doing at the time.
And also, I would say, don't let other people's emotions control yours. You can control your emotion. If someone else is getting mad, or if someone's honking at you because you stop for a stop sign, which the further south Florida you get, I see that a lot. But don't let their anger go into you. Don't let them control your anger.
As we said, they're not the professional drivers.
Exactly.
You're the professional. Keep your emotions in check, and that goes back to one of the distracted driving, the cognitive. You're thinking about your anger towards that idiot on the road, and not the job you have to do.
I think about one of the things about road rage is we get this emotion as we're driving, and what it is, I think it boils down to pride. Is we that guy got the best of us, or that guy won, and I don't want to let him win. But the thing about it is, like you said, let it go. That's a harder thing to do, but once you do let it go and you just sort of get over it, I mean, that guy that you feel took advantage of you or cut in front of your lane when he shouldn't have or didn't use his blinker, 2 seconds later he's completely forgotten. And it's easy just to let it go and then just be done with it, and the consequences of dealing with it and facing it because you're worried about your own pride are so much worse than just letting it go. But once you do let it go, it's so much better.
Oh, great. And another thing I wanted to touch on is, so when we do have to maneuver in a truck, I think it's best to give clear and early indications by using turn signals, braking. Don't come up to your turn and decide to slam on the brakes to make the turn. Brake early. If anything, number one, this is better for your vehicle mechanically. But number two, it gives the traffic behind you a clear indication of what your intentions are, so they have plenty of time to brake and they don't come up under your suicide bar. Turn signals. Now, one of the advantages that our operation has in this is because, as we were talking about, we do have dedicated routes. Our drivers know well in advance, exactly turn by turn, what they're going to do because they do it all the time. Well, because of that advantage we have, it's probably best if you have to perform a lane change at some point, find a point where the road is less congested to go ahead and get into that lane before you get maybe closer to where it's a little, say it's more in an urban area where then you have to fight your way over.
Absolutely.
That way you're in there in advance. You know what turn you're going to make. Click on that blinker. You don't want to click it on too early because people then think you're just riding down the road with a blinker going. But early enough that everyone behind you is very clear on what you're doing. Another thing I want to touch on, guys, is traffic lights. At no point do we want anyone out there trying to beat a yellow light. A yellow for a commercial vehicle means you probably need to be coming to a stop. Now, sometimes if it's yellow right in front of you, don't slam on the brakes. That's what it's there for, to go on through. But also I want to talk about a green light. A green light that has been green for a while, and say you're traveling towards it, there needs to be some sort of anticipation, I would think, of that light starting to turn, depending on the speed.
You call it a stale green light.
A stale green light. There, and because of our dedicated routes, we kind of know when you're approaching a light, you know that it's maybe coming. Do not start pressing on the gas to say, I'm going to hit this light and I'm going to hit it when it's yellow. Just keep your same speed. I would even slow if you feel like it's going to. Don't slow all the way down to a stop, but I would slow your vehicle's speed in anticipation of that thing going yellow, so you can make a gradual stop if it goes yellow before.
Usually pick a point. That's what I was always taught driving, and I would say the same for a commercial vehicle. You're not worrying about seconds or distance. You're saying, okay, well, that tree right there, if it turns yellow by that tree, then I'm going to stop. If I'm past that tree, then I'm going to go through this because it'll still be hopefully still be yellow light.
I guess a big thing, with defensive driving is you just kind of trying to summarize, and you guys fill in some more stuff if you think we've missed, which I'm sure we've missed some stuff. This is by no means conclusive in a defensive driving discussion. There's a lot of things you can do, but a lot of it is just being aware of your surroundings. It really goes back to some of the distractive driving strategies, the hands on the wheel, the eyes. Keep your focus on the job, which is driving, and not just driving and moving from point A to point B, but moving there safely. And that means that there are different things we can do in different situations, but if we are aware of our surroundings, aware of upcoming things in front of us, slowing traffic, emergency vehicles on the side of the road, or even pedestrians, a group of pedestrians that are on a sidewalk or on a crosswalk. Just be aware of all these things and be cautious and be patient. It's not a race. I know we in our company we are on schedules, but there's no substitute in that schedule for safe driving. It's better to arrive late than not arrive at all. So I think that kind of sums up a little bit. Do you guys have any other information on defensive driving, or do you think we've kind of?
I would say the biggest thing that if I had 10 seconds to talk about it would be, like you said, to be focused on what you're doing, but to anticipate, like, okay, that car right there, they're not coming over, but it looks like they might, so I'm going to be ready for that. Or that light's getting ready to turn red, so I'm going to be ready for that. And trying to anticipate all the things that could happen so you can be ready in case it does happen. That's probably the way to sum up, almost like defining defensive driving as being on the defensive for the things that could happen. So if you're not distracted, like you talked about, and you're focused on what you're doing, you're way more prepared, and you have more time to react to the things that other people can do. Because we all would say that we are perfect drivers. It's everybody else is a problem. So
prepare for it. Yeah, just because a driver is not, just because an accident is not your fault does not mean it's not preventable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of not at fault accidents that happen that could have easily been preventable just by people paying better attention.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's great. Now, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we're just going to briefly touch on the Samsara cameras, in-cab cameras, some of the benefits that provides the company and you as a driver, and then we'll just kind of close this thing up and go from there, but we'll see in just a second. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone back. We're just going to have a brief conversation now about the Samsara cameras and GPS that are in everyone's vehicles with Hickman Transport. We put those in when we came on with Strategic Comp, Matt and Chris, when they took over our insurance account for auto liability, they strongly recommended it. They talked about the benefits of it. I heard from other trucking companies, spoke to them. They were all really kind of like, we were worried about the pushback of putting cameras in the trucks initially, but man, it has become great, and our drivers really appreciate it. And I can say that since we put them in, there are many times where there are incidents, and a driver will be in something and he'll call the office and say, check the tapes.
Yeah.
Check the tapes, because it's not what he or she said in the other car, because it's a he said, she said situation. And our drivers, a lot of them now rely on those cameras basically to exonerate them of incidents that otherwise would be a he said, she said. And unfortunately, a lot of times when it's that way and you don't have the video evidence, it automatically becomes the fault of the guy with the signs on his truck, with the DOT number, with the commercial driver's license. But the cameras have been great in kind of shedding some light on those situations.
Yeah, we recommend that similar system. Samsara is a great company. There are other companies out there. Samsara, I think, does one of the better jobs, in my opinion. But we recommend them to any client that we do auto coverage with. We'd like to see them, and it really does make a tremendous difference. Even in times where a driver's at fault, it can actually, or at fault, you can learn things about what happened. You can improve behaviors going forward. Thankfully, the AI and the cameras allows you to detect some of those things from before it actually becomes an accident. But sometimes there are percentages of at fault that can change because of a camera. You could see other things involved. You can see other vehicles that were involved. Sometimes you have a situation where you and the driver in front of you might be doing everything perfectly right. Someone cuts over and cuts off the driver in front of you, causes them to stop, causes you to stop, and what might look like your fault isn't entirely your fault. So
it's a driver who maybe is on down the road.
There may be some liability there, but there might not be negligence. So it might keep a ticket from being given to the driver. In cases where the driver is very much at fault, you would have been at fault without the camera.
With or without
it. Yeah. So we find great value in them, and we're ultimately the ones paying for these claims. So I can tell you, if we didn't find value in them, we wouldn't be recommending them.
Yeah, so I can see that. And now another thing we have is we don't just have forward-facing cameras; we have driver-facing cameras. And this is something that I was a little worried about how our drivers would react to this. I do want to say that nobody's sitting there studying these cameras. A lot of the driver-facing cameras, what it's relying on is AI technology. It basically knows when you're not attentive to the road, if you're looking down, if you're messing with your cell phone, it picks that up. It will alert. We do look at the videos when there's an incident that occurs, but a lot of it is just is basically identifying. It can identify through the AI good driver behaviors. Much of what we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Seatbelts. We have not talked about seatbelts today, but wearing of seatbelts is important. I mean, that's your safety.
Yeah.
Keeping you locked into that seat, and God forbid something really bad happens and you come into the rear of somebody. But the cameras do identify if you're wearing seatbelts. We use this stuff to really rank our drivers as far as who has better scores than other drivers.
Yeah.
Now we're using these cameras also for the people who don't have as good of scores to maybe go in and like coach them about things they could do to improve, identify maybe some safety problems that could be out there. And I hope that they appreciate it, because we're just trying to keep them able to do their job and come home safe at the end of the day, and let the people around them get home safe. But it's worked out really great for us, and I really think while we kind of were a little nervous getting into it, and I know some of our drivers were a little nervous getting into it, I feel like all in all, we're very happy with the results, and see a great benefit with it.
Great.
Chris and Matt, I really want to thank you guys for coming here and doing this with us. I hope you out there have gotten some information and have enjoyed this. I'd like to make this a more regular thing, maybe doing some other videos, not just on safety, but we can do those, but maybe on some operations side. There's a lot of possibility with this, and I hope it continues. We'll try to get as much to you guys. If anyone has any questions about what we've discussed today, or maybe some suggestions of future videos, or what maybe something that we haven't put in light really here, get with us. If it's questions for Matt or Chris, we'll direct those to them so they can maybe do a little digging, get a good answer for you. But we'd love to hear from you. Hope you enjoyed this, and see you next time.